Yay, we're here.
Oh, I have to do it a little bit closer.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Welcome, everyone.
Hey, everyone. So this is Keith from Spring, and we have a few minutes before the official start of our session today. Really excited to spend this time with all of you. And I'm here, I'm going to do it this way because it's the way I see it on my screen, but I'm here joined by Jamie.
Hi, I see it on my screen this way.
Awesome. And so, we'll just wait for a few minutes to get everybody onto the crowdcast so we can begin our session today. And in our session today, our goal is to try and cover a lot of ground in terms of, how to approach not only the COVID-19 crisis, but also the recession. And so, really looking forward to having you guys involved, which I think is going to be a great conversation. As you guys are settling in, just one thing I want to note is at the bottom of your screen, you've got this button that says Ask a Question. And so at any point in time, if you guys have questions that you want to ask, what you can do is you can type them in there, and then what we'll do is we'll respond to those questions as they come up. And if we do get a lot of questions, and what we'll do is we'll get you to upvote them so that we can pick the priority questions that we're going to be going through. So really looking forward to that. And maybe while we're waiting for the rest of the people to show up, first, I do want to acknowledge and thank EU for Innovation for allowing us to put this webinar on. It's really fantastic to have organizations like EU for Innovation supporting entrepreneurs in different parts of the world, and obviously here in Albania. And so just as an aside for everyone, if you don't know me, I have been to Albania actually, I think 4 times in the last 2 years, and it's been an incredible experience. I've had the good fortune of being in a couple of cities now, and so I will tell you that I live in Vancouver, Canada, and so Albania is one of the very rare places in the world where I feel like the seafood is as amazing in Albania as it is in Vancouver. So that's my little personal experience. Yeah. So now this is our big chance to convince Jamie to come to Albania and check it out. So
well, it's a good advertisement. So
right. So does anybody have any questions that you might want to ask us before we actually get started in the main presentation? Whether that is about the COVID-19 crisis or about recession or about startups in general. I'm more than happy to kind of talk through any questions that you might have. So
I'm going to be looking at the questions throughout the presentation. So if you see me looking around or not at the camera, I'm reading questions and figuring out how to ask Keith them. So one of my jobs today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and definitely let us know if you're here by saying hi in the chat. That'd be great. So
awesome. Well, we're just at 9, so we'll give people a couple minutes before we dive in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know we have a few people from a few different places actually on this call. So I'm actually I'm in Richmond, BC, Canada. And I know Jamie's in Vancouver. I believe Erkins is in Toronto right now. John, great to have you. And starting a new hub in Nigeria. Very cool. You're asking this question, COVID-19 hinders physical meetups. Absolutely true. And so you're asking this question, how to digitally start. And so one of the, I think, biggest trends that we have seen in the last couple of weeks, and it's hard to believe that for most of the world, the shutdown really only has been a few weeks or a month. But what we have been seeing a lot of spaces do is they have been running a set of new online activity. For example, online breakfasts, online what we call happy hours, where it's often in the middle of the afternoon when people might be taking a coffee or a tea or some other drink. We have even seen what we would call in North America online potlucks. And online potlucks is basically where everybody comes with food and then come together and they say, hey, this is what I've made, and they show everybody, which is really a lot of fun. But it's as a physical space, what you want to do is replicate what is already happening in real spaces, which is those informal connections. One thing that I would also encourage you to take a look at is the idea of doing what we call, oh my goodness, virtual office hours.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another term that I'm looking for that escapes me at the moment, but it's where you would convene everyone around a table in a co-working space or in a hub to just be together and work together. And so the idea is that what you would do is you'd use a tool like Zoom, and then people would come together, and it would basically be what we call virtual office hours, where people would all be there, and there would be like, say, 16 or 20 people or more or less. But the goal would be to just have people know that at a certain point in time every day, 1 hour or 90 minutes, that they would have an opportunity to be in the same space as others. And if they have questions, they can ask questions of the group when it comes up. So John, I'm really encouraging you to think a little bit about how in a hub people informally come together, breakfast, potlucks, or meals, happy hours, office hours, those kind of meetups, I think are really the way to get it started. And don't think about it as a formal launch. Think about it as what we would call a soft launch. Like, just start by convening people. And then there's this natural understanding that when they need to connect, focused on Albania, there's actually a couple of completely amazing hubs in Albania. One is called Destil, which is a space that is focused on
Keith, you're
the creative class economy and entrepreneurs.
All right. I am back. Keith is not. Can you all? The sound is perfect. Oh my gosh. Amazing. Okay. Now I'll stop multitasking. Amazing. Okay. I'm Jamie. Keith should be joining us soon. Let's hope so. It shows that he's reconnecting. So I'm just gonna make sure that keeping track of him. So to answer John's question, I don't know if anyone could hear Keith, but I'll just get him to write a little bit in the comments, or we'll email you after, John. So I work with Spring, and I also am an entrepreneur myself, and I run a business called Thrive Art Studio, and it's to support female artists. So we run a mastermind program as well as professional development. So actually, to John's question from earlier about starting a hub or starting spaces digitally, Keith is back.
Wow, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Sometimes the internet just has enough, you know.
Okay, can't even hear Keith. I'm asking the crowd. So I was just saying that we will, Keith may be writing down some of the answer for John in the comments later. So let's dive in. I introduced myself and Thrive. So basically I build community, and I was doing that in person. And then about 2 years ago, I switched all that community to online community. So at our peak of Thrive, we had about 235 members all doing online meetings. And so I find this time very interesting, because the reason I did that was because we were actually having cash flow problems. So it wasn't a recession, but it was our own mini recession. So we had to make quick changes and kind of pivot the business, and we had our most profitable year out of that. So that's sort of where my background comes from. And with starting with Spring and Keith, it's been amazing to just dive in and see the similarities and the differences. So Keith, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Keith, and I run Spring. And Spring is an organization that helps entrepreneurs to change the world. So we tend to work with entrepreneurs relatively early, so kind of idea on a napkin through to about, say, 1.5 million euros in annual revenue. And that tends to be our focal point. So we do incubation, acceleration. We also help entrepreneurs to raise money. And over the last about 4 years or so, we have been doing work in a range of communities around the world, including in Albania. And so we're really excited to be here. Just to give you guys a bit of context, Spring is my fourth venture. So 3 ventures before that, a few of those were in the technology space. And so I have the good fortune and probably the hairline to kind of prove that I have been through a couple of recessions in the past. And so I have been through 3 recessions previously. This is my third as a leader of business. Anita says that she can't hear me. How's everybody else doing for my voice? Let me know. Jamie, can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, great.
It's going in and out for some people, so apologies. It seems to be beyond our control. So I'll ask the community here that if you can't hear us, just put it in the chat, because then we'll re-sign in. But if it's coming in and out, it seems to just be the way it is, and we'll send everyone the recording after. Yeah. So if it is terrible, you at least can have the recording.
Yeah. And Armand, thanks for that recommendation for people to move to Chrome if need be. So I think that's great. So just to wrap it up, I've been through 3 recessions as a leader of a business. I've even raised money in 2 separate recessions. So our goal here is to kind of bring some of our collective wisdom and experience, and also some best practices to this process.
Yeah.
So, great.
Amazing. Okay.
So perhaps now what we'll do is we'll move into our core presentation. So what we're going to do, everybody, is Jamie and I are going to tag team back and forth as we go through this presentation, and we're going to kind of talk through some key topics. As you guys have questions, keep them coming. Remember, there's this like ask a question button down at the bottom. And so use that. And then Jamie will be tracking the questions and make sure that we cover them off. So I'm just going to quickly do a share screen. So if you guys just give me a second, and let's just get us there, which is great. And I'm going to pop in presentation mode. Great. So I think we're good. So start number one, what we're going to do is we're going to cover off some rules of engagement. And then we're going to talk a little bit about this COVID-19 crisis that we're in. Then what we're going to do is we're going to shape the new normal. And how do we approach this new world that we're in? We'll go through the assessment process, which we think is the critical starting point. And certainly that has been my experience. And then what we'll do is we'll move into how you ask for help and then what's coming up next. Again, keep the questions coming. And just as an aside, JB asked, or IB asked the question in chat, how can startups adjust the way we do business in this COVID-19 world, especially in fundraising? So we're actually going to talk through the answer to that question as we go through this session today. So really looking forward to going through that. So to that end, just to talk a little bit about rules of engagement for today. So we've got this ask a question button down at the bottom, and we're going to track them and answer them. If we do run out of time at the end, we will make sure that we share some answers to some unanswered questions post-meeting. And in addition to that, if there's some really like great questions that we ask, we'll put together a bit of an FAQ and then send that along as well. And if your screen does freeze, then just reload the page and we'll go from there. So to talk a little bit about COVID-19 and the Great Recession is a term that some people are using right now. And so it is important to note that with the current situation, it took China with Wuhan, which was kind of the focal point, about 5 to 6 months to get to a place where they could start to lift the lockdown. If we look at what's happening in Spain today, it looks like their kind of lockdown period is looking like 3 to 4 months. And so what we don't know yet is we don't know what's going to happen in the Balkans and what's going to happen in Albania. And so because that is a question mark, we as entrepreneurs, we need to make sure that we step in with courage into this uncertainty. And then as things start to change, we can kind of adapt accordingly. So that's kind of the starting point. Now, similarities and differences between past recessions. So first, it is the first medically induced recession since 1919, which was the Spanish flu. And in my experience anyways, the closest approximation to what is happening right now is what happened at 9/11 and the 2001, 2003 kind of recession, when there was a period of time right after 9/11 of like intense activity. And there was a sense that maybe, a recession was going to happen, but not. We weren't sure. People were very, very busy. And then, we kind of get past the immediate crisis and then into kind of the regular, new reality, as it were. So what's unique about this one? It's medically induced with a lockdown. That's really unprecedented in human history. We also have something very important to note, which is there is the new power economies, right? So countries like China, Vietnam, Indonesia in particular. And the reason I'm mentioning them is because they do represent about 2 billion people on the planet. And so it's a huge piece of the world population. And even in 2008, 2009, they really were not primary economies, globally. And so now they are. And so because they are, there's a question about how they will impact how much or how little we have a recession. And then the last thing that I want to share is that there are whole dimensions and segments of the economy that did not even exist in 0809. So one example I'll give you is with crowdfunding. Crowdfunding was 1 year old when the 08 recession started. And last year, crowdfunding actually raised more money for businesses than all of venture capital and angel investing combined. So it's a huge pot of capital that's sitting there. And so the question is what will happen with that? Same with circular economy, gig economy, right? Freelancers and that whole world. And so how will they either make the recession easier or harder on everyone? And those are questions that I think we're all going to go through. Now, in addition to that, I do want to kind of highlight that from my perspective, we're going to get this kind of camel effect recession where we're going to see that. And I'm sure for many of you, we're seeing this burst of activity. And then what's going to happen is, we're going to end up in a recession. And the only question is like, how big is it? How big and for how long? And no one can predict that. But what we can do is we can respond and be prepared for it. And that's really what we're going to try and do. Now, as it relates to developing countries, as it relates to Albania, I think there are a few things that we need to remind ourselves of. First, access to capital will become very challenging. We will really need to control our own destiny when it comes to things like revenue and finding ways to fund our business. And so Mentor asked this question, will we see more VC money for startups due to COVID? I think the answer to that is definitely no. I think we will see a lot of VCs standing on the sidelines. And there's a few reasons for that. Where you will see money being invested actively right now, I would say would be in healthcare, especially like mobile health, telehealth, places like that. I think you'll see capital be really, really active. Anything that can help people do work online, we'll see a lot of capital. But I think most everything else will not. And just for everyone, one of the big reasons, or a couple of big reasons for that, one is that investors will be focused on helping their own companies survive. The second one is that they will be looking for deals, right? They'll be looking for companies to reduce their valuations. So just a couple of reasons. We can get more into that in the session. But a couple of things that I just want to round out. Access to capital will be hard. Access to markets, there is a big question out there as to whether or not this is going to create more protectionism or actually make it more global, because we're having calls like this. Who cares about the border, right? And then we have, ability for corporates to pay. So if you're selling things that are business to business, do they, corporates are going to ask, do they need it? Will they pay for it? Consumer fears and uncertainty. So really, this is the opportunity to focus on a couple of categories. One is stuff that people really need, like food. But then a couple of other places, small indulgences or pocket luxuries. So in every recession, for example, sales of chocolate and wine go up. People can't go on vacation, but they can. They can afford small things to make them feel good at the end of the day. And then tourism, of course, right now, especially in this particular COVID-19 crisis, is massively impacted, and it's generally impacted in a recession as well. And so I would expect tourism to not only be impacted now during the lockdown, but it will be impacted throughout the recession. So I'm going to pause here just to see, Jamie, if you want to chime in on anything.
One thing that you and I have discussed that I think is pretty important in making this space we're in unique is that because of the lockdown, we're actually having buying power and habits really changing in this time. So people are running their households differently. So the real question is, once we're allowed outside, are these buying patterns going to stay the same? So, will someone stop buying their groceries from a delivery service? Will they start going to the grocery store, or will that already be in their habits now, and it will just continue on. So there is some customer buying behavior that's going to change here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I have a question that I will ask now because it's relevant.
Great.
So it seems that loneliness economy will be a short-term boom after the recession. What do you think will be medium to long-term booms after the recession?
Wow. If I could predict that, I would be a very wealthy man.
I'm testing you so that we know where we're at.
Yeah. I do think there are a few things. I think we are going to see a fundamental shift into providing healthcare online and mobile. And so I think you will see that as a boom. I think as well, how people do distributed teams, I think will also be a big boom. We're going to see a next wave of what I will call this hybrid between e-commerce and in person. So e-commerce, like online sales versus retail. And I know a lot of people are predicting that we will see a new version of retail when the lockdown ends. And I think that will actually continue to accelerate. So those would be a couple of areas that I personally see. There are a couple of other things that are going to be absolutes. One thing to note is that in this lockdown, pollution has dropped dramatically, right? So you guys can look online if you Google India and the Himalayas. For the first time in 30 years, you can actually see the Himalayan mountains from India. And so we're in a place now where, especially in big cities, people can actually physically experience a reduction in pollution. And so I think one of the other big impacts coming out of this lockdown will be an increase in clean tech and helping the world to be cleaner. Because people are now being reminded of actually how nice it is outside, when there's not as much pollution, which is kind of cool. So that's a very, very important dynamic to think about as well. So those are probably a couple of things that I personally think about, given that we're just a couple months in on this thing. I would not be buying airline stocks anytime soon. I think, a lot of businesses are going to learn about how to do business without flying. And so to summarize the answer to this question as well is, remember that human nature, people need about 60 days to change patterns of behavior. And so all of us are going to be locked down for more than 60 days. And so one thing that I would encourage is to think about what patterns of behavior in business and what patterns of behavior for consumers are required to change during the lockdown. Those patterns of behavior will stick. How can you as an entrepreneur step into that new pattern of behavior and provide products and solutions to help support that? So that's, I think, really the question you want to ask. And as you go about your house and as you go about your kind of like limited landscape and as you go about online right now, think about what patterns am I changing in my business? Am I changing in my own life? And then how does that create opportunity? So cool.
Well, I think that was a great answer, Keith. Well done.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, so there's some good, I think tourism will pick back up after, but business travel will slow. So I am gonna touch on that, Martin. I would agree, tourism will come back, but not to where it was before. And there's two reasons. One is, part of the world is afraid. And so, I don't think people will go back to the sense of like, oh, wow, it's over in a binary sense of like, there's no more crisis, there's no more COVID-19. So some people just won't travel because of fear. But the second thing is we'll be in a recession. People will have less. So to give you guys some context, in Canada, where our entire population is 38 million people, we've had 2 million people apply for unemployment in 60 days. So, think about that number for a minute. It's like, our unemployment in Canada has gone up 3 times in 60 days. And in the US is now at 10% unemployment. So 10% of all Americans are unemployed. And in addition to that, it's expected to go to 20 to 30 million. Now, and Martin, short to medium term, people will have less money. And that's my point, is that is a recession is short to medium term, right? In the long term, of course, people are going to travel again. But right now, what we're talking about is this next kind of 12 to 24 months. And so that's kind of the cool part. And Martin, great that you're engaging on this topic, because this is what we need to do as entrepreneurs, is to share our observations and to share what we see, data points, trends, news articles, etc. And so I think that's super cool. Yeah, awesome.
Okay, amazing.
Okay. Sunila, you asked a question about hospitality sector, especially standalone restaurants. We actually are going to give an example of a restaurant that has adapted in this crisis. And so I am going to come back to your question, if that's okay. Cool. So what I'm going to do is we've gone through a few questions now, which is great. I'm going to talk about the new normal. And so you want to think about this process as we want to go through 4 key steps. And so those 4 key steps are assess, respond, adapt, and thrive. And where we're going to spend our time today is in assess, and making sure that we're setting ourselves up for success. And if there's one piece of advice that I would give everyone on this webinar, is that the greatest risk to your business is not moving fast enough to assess and make changes. So that's actually the most critical success factor, because a lot of people, they're not sure of what to do or how to do it. And I always say the most common question in entrepreneurship is, how do I? And so your goal is to assess now, this week, how do I do this? What does my current situation look like? And we're going to give you the how do I right now. So in step 1 of business resiliency and assessment, we acknowledge that all of our businesses are made up of 6 main elements: finance, sales, marketing, community, product, and team. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to walk through how you want to assess each one of these and make sure you know exactly what you're facing and dealing with right now. And then under our order of priority, it is important to note that under assessment, we do have a priority order. We have to start with finance and our numbers. Then we move to sales, marketing, community, product, and team, in that order. It is not to say the team is not important. The team is incredibly important, but we need to know where we stand financially. And so we're really honed in on those first 3 very quickly. And so as a starting point, we have these, what we call universal truth questions. And these are questions that you will ask of all 6 aspects of your business, right? So what has changed? And in certain cases, what has gone? So if I use Sunila's example of restaurant, like the ability for people to sit down at my restaurant right now is gone. And so we then ask ourselves the question, when did they come back? What is the same?
People need to eat.
Say that again.
I'm going on the restaurant. I'm riffing on the restaurant.
I know, right?
People need to eat is the same.
Yeah. And then what is the risk level? And when I talk about risk level, we'll talk a little bit about that, especially when we get into sales and marketing. And then what is the new opportunity, or what new opportunities exist? That kind of comes back to that question earlier. It even kind of speaks to Martin's comment, like if tourism is kind of reduced now, but it is going to come back in the future, what opportunities does that create? How will tourism look differently, in that kind of like medium term range? And then how does this impact my forecast? And when we say forecast, it's sales and expenses, right? And so this is kind of the critical places that we go. And so let's take the time now to assess each area. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with finance. And Jamie is going to take you through the finance section. And while she's doing that, you're going to see me exit stage left because I need to go get my charger. So Jamie, over to you.
So finance is the most important thing to be brave enough to step forward and look at right now, because this is what's going to set sort of your timeline, your foundation of what you need to do quickly, what you can wait on. It's really going to be your guiding principle right now. And like Keith said, it's about moving quite quickly. And it's not necessarily about making decisions quickly, but it's about getting your foundation in order. And that starts with finance. So a huge thing, the most important thing here is to find out if your revenue goes to zero, how many months or weeks do you have? So what is your runway? So that's your cash, and make sure you're minusing from that any expenses that you're owing, so accounts receivable, that, get a really clear picture here. If you have a Visa bill right now, take it out of that cash. If you have payroll, get a real sense of where you're actually at. And then you want to divide that by your monthly costs. So the expenses that happen every month, and that is your runway. So that can be really scary, but it's just super important that you know that number. The thing is, if you look at it and you realize that you actually have less than 3 months of a runway, that is when you're moving right into emergency response. So emergency response is basically that that this is kind of your do or die. And that's a really important thing to know, because it's going to change your decisions right now. If your runway is past 3 months, you have a little bit more time to plan, think through some of the things that Keith are saying, like, how is the industry going to change? How do I want to respond, and that sort of thing. So it's really important, whether you sit on what side of that 3 months. And then when you think about your worst case revenue, you want to really make an assessment of, what if my revenue is zero? What if it more? What if it's the same amount? Kind of looking at your industry. A target here is that you would really want to make sure that you could survive and that you can have a plan till 2021. So that's a long way out. That's your forecast. And we've talked about how right now, any kind of plans you made pre-COVID time really need to be put on the back burner, and it's really looking with eyes fully open to this current situation. And I think an important point for me is, when I had to do this with my business, a few years ago, there is a real grieving process of what I thought the business was going to be, the plans I had, the forecast I had. And yeah, it's sad to see that change. But the exciting thing is that this can be a time where your business is actually stronger, actually better in many ways, because you have the foundations in place. Keith, anything to add about that before we go to the next slide?
No, I think this is great. I think what I would share on this, everyone, is that numbers are an area where we as entrepreneurs sometimes are afraid. We're afraid to look at kind of the hard reality of the numbers. And given that I've been through 3 recessions, what I will tell you is that before you look at the numbers in this way, it's intimidating. It is, it's hard because you worry that it might look like failure. Mm-hmm. And so what I will tell you though is, once you go through this exercise, you'll actually be relieved, because you'll know what you're working with, and you will have control as a result, to then understand what is possible and what is not possible. So my encouragement to each one of you is that, once you get this number built, then you will actually feel like a lot of pressure off, and then you can kind of focus on what needs to get done. And if you need an accountability partner, my comment to you is, I have been an accountability partner to many entrepreneurs on this, including Jamie. And my comment to you is, I want to go through this exercise, reach out to me in LinkedIn and say, Keith, I'm about to go through it, but I'm not sure, or raise whatever questions, and I will coach you through it. Because once you get to the other side, then you will you'll feel a lot better and you'll know what your options are. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Can you move the next slide?
Absolutely.
You're the slide master. And just, to continue on with Keith's point, the amazing thing here is once you know your runway, once you know these numbers, then you can put on the entrepreneurial hat and get into the spirit of why we all started our own thing, which was to make an impact and to be sustainable here. So this is an exciting time to then look and say, okay, if I'm in my emergency zone, I need help, then what are my fast cash sources that are available? So revenue, really looking at, like, especially if you have outstanding bills from clients, you want to make sure that you're looking at what can come into the business as quickly as possible. I kind of look at this as like go with the low-hanging fruit, because you want that quickness to happen here. So really looking at your revenue that's to come and analyzing that and what is owed. So grants, loans, and subsidies. So having a real pulse on what's happening in your community, and that's why it's so great to attend webinars and be connected to your incubators so that you know what is available. Make sure you're looking at those with a real critical eye. What actually makes sense that you could get within, again, your runway now, within the time that you have to sort of survive as a business. So it might be, you might want to make a list and actually, number them of the soonest you can get that cash to later on kind of thing, to make a plan of how you're going to spend your time. So again, accounts receivable. So that's looking at what is owed, what can you go after right now with making some, hard, uncomfortable phone calls that are going to be worth it to keep going. And then we have on here friends and family and you. So friends and family we put on here as this is your last resort. So remember the bank of last resort. It's really important to remember that friends, family, and you are the last part of this process. We want to go through all the other ways of getting cash available. So for me during this time, it was actually Keith's advice in my business. And I went and got a small business loan, and instead of going to friends and family. And the amazing thing is by going through the loan process, I was able to keep that accountability. It was outside of myself or my family. And then you also know that you have that as a last resort if you need to go down that other road. So this is our list that we've compiled, and just make sure that you're really looking at what is reasonable to get within your runway. And that's why we need runway, and then we go to cash sources. Do not do it the opposite way, or it becomes very messy and you will waste a lot of time. So we want to get things moving as quickly as possible. Keith?
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of sharing. One thing I want to highlight to everyone is that in that ask a question button down at the bottom, there's actually an ability to upvote questions. And so right now there's a question from Erikens, which is, what kind of cost should I cut first during this crisis as a business? And so I just wanted to highlight that we will be moving to that question in this next slide. And I think there's an opportunity for you to hopefully get the answer to Erikens' question on this next slide. Now, just to wrap on this piece, there is something that I just want to highlight, which is the bank of last resort. Just please, everyone, remember that your wallet, right? Your wallet is the last resort. It is the last thing that will invest in your business when things go tough. So do try and look at other sources of funding and cash first before you look at your own bank account. And the reason for that is because your own bank account will be the last thing that will invest in a crisis. And so just try and keep your cash as close as you can. Look at these other sources first, so that you maximize the options that you have. And then what we'll do now is we'll dive in on this question that Erikens has using this slide. And so back over to you, Jamie.
Yeah, so something, from personal experience, A huge thing I had to kind of grapple with was understanding the mindset that actually cutting expenses and saving money is profit. So we have that kind of at the bottom in bold. A dollar saved is a dollar profit. Whereas revenue, you're still paying those expenses. You're still, that's operational costs are in there. It's not a dollar for a dollar. So it's so worth taking the time to look at what you can cut. So we want to make, what I would do and what I did was make a list of all my monthly expenses, and then all my one-offs and where they come into play into the business. So now that you know your runway, you want to get out the calendar, and the calendar is going to help you look at when are payments due. When are these one-off payments due? When are my monthly payments due? And you want to know it to the cent. And I say this is right now there is a feeling that we want to run after cash. We want to make a new plan. It's very hectic. And if you can breathe and actually look at your business really critically. So you want to look at rent, payroll, contractors. How are these costs? What is strategic to move around, and really make a plan before you're making any decisions. A huge one for me at the time was software and systems. So I had kind of been built to believe, and in some ways this is true, but automation was the most important thing. Having, not spending this manual time. But what that led to was I was spending a ton on software and systems and automation. And it's crazy how quickly a $10 subscription, a $50, $250 subscription to things start to really add up. And you see money just moving out the door so quickly every month. So especially in this time, it's really important to look at, maybe in a different time, it would be nice if that was automated. But actually, right now is a time where I can cut and paste those emails and send them to save that amount. I remember for me, a really sad but wonderful moment was actually canceling my Spotify subscription. It was $10, but I felt really empowered because I felt like I was really doing something for my business, and it made a difference. My expenses cut was the thing that actually saved the business at the time. So just really remember it, and it's worth taking the time, and no amount cutting is too small.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great example. One thing I do want to highlight is that a lot of software companies, and it's important to note when we talk about software, you don't need to be a software company yourself. So what we're talking about is people like Facebook, Zoom, Adobe. Like, there's a lot of tools out there that every business uses. And so what's happened is a lot of those companies have waived fees, at least in the short term. Mm-hmm. So my recommendation coming out of this is, as soon as you're done this call, just create a list of all the software that you pay on a monthly basis. Go to their website and find out if they're offering discounts or free. Mm-hmm. And it is possible that that you do have to look at a competitor, because maybe like the one that you're using is still charging, but the competitor is not. And Armand, thanks for sharing about canceling Spotify, because and here's my, not that it's an exact, so it's important to note, I'm sharing a couple because we're all in the same place, right? When we're reducing costs, it doesn't mean we have to stop listening to music or other things. And so I think sharing like cheap and free ways is really good. Erikins, nice. So I do think that's really important, is to create that list and then just start chopping, because it's shocking how much we end up spending there. Now, a question has come up, and it's actually been upvoted a couple of times while we've been talking about this, Jamie. And that question is, how do you cut costs when you're just building the business? Does this mean I should put the idea on hold and look for a job or other sources of revenue? And I think that that's a fantastic question. And I'm going to maybe start the answer to this, and Jamie, you can chime in. But the reality is that every business has this big question, which is, do we continue? Do we put it on the shelf, or do we stop it entirely? like as in kill the business. And so, I do believe that, IB, the question that you ask is a really important one. And I think the starting point is you have to ask yourself the question, is this going to be a business going forward? That's kind of the first question you need to ask. If the answer to that question is yes, then you have a choice. One is to continue and the other one is to pause. And really, there's a couple of quick questions that you want to ask yourself the question. One is, how much income do you need? Right? So that's kind of question number one. And then question number two that immediately follows that is, how much income can I get out of the business in the short term? And what I will tell you is that often in a business, there's actually more opportunities for revenue than you think, but you have a very short window to find out. So my encouragement to you is, if you know how much income you need, look at the business and say, how much income do I need to get out of the business? Go through a brainstorming exercise to identify what that looks like. And then take 30 days to try and go make that happen. And if you can do a 30-day blitz to go find revenue, and we'll give an example here in a minute, but that would be the starting point. Because sometimes it's not just about cost, but it's actually about revenue generation. So Jamie, over to you.
Yeah, and I would just add that sometimes these types of environments actually make for a more interesting and viable business. I think sometimes we are kind of sold the shiny dream of Instagram of what it has to look like and feel like to produce a product, but actually bootstrapping it and finding out if that idea works in 30 days should be used no matter if we're in this or not. And so if you put some time limits and some money limits to it, there's no reason why this is a time it can't be started.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Cool. So I was just rounding out just a couple of comments from IB in the chat. Awesome. So maybe what I'll do is, Jamie, do you want me to dive in on this one?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So the piece that I just want to touch on here is that, and by the way, everybody, questions have been fantastic. Keep the questions coming for sure. But the one thing that I want to share is that in my past experience in the 01-02 recession, the 08-09 recession, and now in this one as well, I moved very quickly to get the team involved. And the reason for that is because it takes a village to raise a business and it takes a village to save a business. And so, we're only as good as our team, whether the team is like 2 co-founders or it's 15 people. I don't care how many people on the team, but get people involved. And if you do have a team, then what I would encourage is talk about things like job sharing, people maybe working 4 days a week to save jobs, because you can then spread sort of the costs around a little bit. The other one is to do customer discovery as a team, right? Finding out what customers need, get out there as fast as you can, because the more people talking to customers, and IB raised this comment and we were talking about a 30-day plan, the more IB can get multiple voices in on that customer discovery and sales effort, the faster you'll get patterns of behavior, like patterns of change in your information, and then you can react to it. And then the other one, of course, is the team is fantastic for coming up with new ideas, especially when they know that we're talking about a crisis and how we're working together to overcome it. And so I do want to give a quick case study before I hand it back to Jamie, and that is that there was a company that I was working with, and they were in a situation where they had a team of 10 and they had only 6 weeks of cash left. And so what they did is they actually brought all 10 people together and they said, hey, listen, like, we're in a crisis, and what we need to do is we need to stretch our runway. And so what actually happened is a couple of things. One is the team agreed to do some salary reductions and spread the load so that everybody could remain on the job, which was amazing. But in that process, the 2 salespeople actually identified a couple of new ways to go about selling in the marketplace. And not only were they able to reduce their cost by half in that process, but they actually doubled their revenue in 30 days. And so, but I will tell you, the founders did not have the answers to those questions. Those answers came from the team. So I just really wanted to share that as a real life example. It is important to note as an aside that it's a software company I'm referring to, and within 3 months of that cost reduction process and kind of turning things around, they actually raised $1.8 million. And so really, really good example of what's possible when you face the tough question of finance up front. So Jamie, over to you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think it's so important when you're cutting expenses that the team, you can kind of gamify this, and it's kind of a part about being in it together and surviving together, because if you're cutting some of this automation, you got to make sure that someone on the team is willing to actually step in and do the cut and paste or whatever you need. You need to tell them that they're going to have ads on Spotify. So just making sure that team is part of the process is going to make this time more fun, really, because you have to go through it. You might as well do it together.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah. Cool. Well, why don't we keep going?
Okay.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into customers and sales. And so in this particular process, we are having to answer these tough questions and important questions. So who are your existing customers? And when I say that, sometimes you're like, well, of course I know who my existing customers are. But what I'm really referring to here is specifics. What are the demographics? What are the types of businesses? Like, and when you look at the specifics, then we get to ask ourselves the next questions, which is what has changed for them? Can they still buy? You know, if they can still buy like at the same price in the same way, restaurants is a really good example of this. We're going to talk about it in a minute. Who else can buy? So now we get to ask the question about, like, are there opportunities out there that you know didn't exist before that exist now? So what is recession proof, or who is recession proof? Things like healthcare, food, you know, people still need to eat. And so it's a great opportunity. Small luxuries or small indulgences that I talked about earlier, insurance, finance, financial services, banking, right? And then clean tech, which we talked about earlier. And so what you want to do is you guys want to create a spreadsheet, right? And or a document. And it's a table that we're trying to build. And so what we do is we say for each customer segment that we have, different demographics, et cetera, what we want to do is say these different columns, what has changed for them? Can they still buy? What's changed? And now we get to then add some new rows, which is who's new, right? So, and then for them, we ask, what has changed for them? Can they still buy, right? So we start to ask these questions, but create a document, whether it's a table or a spreadsheet, where you can actually look at it, talk about it as a team, compare notes with your peers, so you can say, do I know? Where you don't know the answer, what we're going to do is we then go back to customer discovery. So for all the startup people on this call, customer discovery is just kind of like a fancy term for market research that we do ourselves. But what we're doing is we're getting on the phone or we're getting on social to talk to them. In business to business, any of you who are selling business to business, we're talking about phone calls and using tools like Zoom or Skype or WhatsApp. And then if it's business to consumer, we're using social networks and maybe going so far as calls and Zooms as well. But in order to fill out that table, what we want to do is talk to them and say, like, how are you doing? What do you need? How can I help? Those are the three big questions. And you want to ask those questions and ideally, right, we're writing down the answers as we're talking to them, because we're looking for patterns. What has changed? What do they really need now that they didn't need before? Or what don't they need now that they used to need, right? The other thing is, as you start to see these patterns, and if I use IB as an example, trying to 30 days to revenue, as you ask these big three questions, you know, how are you doing? What do you need? How can I help? You'll start to see the patterns. And when you see the patterns, then you can kind of suggest potential solutions that you can offer. So you could, after asking those questions, you could say, hey, I have a possible solution for you. Do you think this would help? right? And so it's a real opportunity to use a technique that is actually called solutions selling, right? And so we're using a classic sales techniques that's been used for more than 100 years. But what we're doing is we're just adapting solution selling into this recession to help us to understand our customer better and then get back to revenue, right? So that's what we're trying to do. And so I'm going to give you guys a quick example. And this example is that Portable Electric is a company that focuses on portable energy pods. And you can see the 4 examples that they have right now, and they're all solar powered. So the original idea behind this was to put them at locations like, concert festivals, outdoor events, movie film sets, which of course is huge in North America and places like Los Angeles and Vancouver. But of course, film shoots and events aren't happening, right? So their revenue essentially goes to zero immediately, right? And so what they did is when they went and asked this question, who is recession proof, they actually found a new market. And in COVID-19, there are a lot of temporary hospitals being put up. A lot of hospitals need extra power because of the load that's happening on the hospitals. And so what they've done is they've pivoted and they've taken these portable energy pods into the medical field in response to COVID-19. And that's how they've actually rebuilt their sales funnel through this process. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just pause here for a minute and just see if there are any questions that are related. Or Jamie, while I'm looking at the questions, if you maybe just want to add in any quick commentary, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think that this was something that we did right after our looking at our numbers and just remembering that your customers, they're people too. And we're in a very strange time where actually everyone's experiencing the same thing, more or less. So other times when you are, at the time I was going through this, it wasn't a recession. So I was talking to customers that were surprised to hear we were having trouble. But this is kind of this opportunity to call and human to human, see what someone needs and how their life has changed. So this might feel kind of like scary phone calls and a lot of work, but actually think of it more as connection, and you really get to, provide what people need, which is really exciting. So
yeah, absolutely. Just as an aside, there's a couple questions that are up in the question list. If you guys take a look, upvote whichever question that you might like. At the moment, the questions are not specific to this particular section, so I'm probably going to save them to the end, and then we'll go through them. And so I'm going to so Dorian and Warren, just know we see your questions. We will get to them at the end. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pop to the next slide, which is on marketing, and then we're going to move from marketing to community. And Jamie, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Yeah. So again, why customers discovery is before marketing is because there is no point right now sharing something that is not useful. So you really want to go to your customer, and why taking notes is so important is because you really want to take some of that language and the words that they're directly using to describe the change to put into your marketing. So really thinking about what has changed, the channel. So a lot of the, delivery of things are going to have a new channel, but also where people are every day. A lot of people aren't at work, so where are they is a really important question, and that's something that you can find out during your customer discovery. So what is the decision-making process? So again, during customer discovery, asking questions around what they're buying right now and how they're doing it is going to help you kind of discover how the marketing needs to be put. And tone. It's so important to know this information by talking to your customers before planning marketing, because if you get the tone wrong right now, you will be in trouble. So you want to make sure that your marketing is aligned with your customers. And so a tip that kind of relates to this at the bottom there is shut up. It's true. Shut it up. All automation. Shut up. Unless you're saying the right stuff. And Jobber is an example have a company that actually they shut off all their automated marketing. So we highly recommending doing that and definitely going through and really editing, because again, if the tone is wrong and if you are kind of very loudly talking about things that are not relevant, it was very, very damaging. So I stand by my shut up comment. You got to make sure you're saying the right things. And with that, and to know that, is to look at the data. So that is looking at, what posts are doing well and looking at what your customers have to say to make this new plan. It's really, really important that you're not guessing in this, because it can be super, super damaging.
Yeah. Great. Well shared. Cool. There is a question that has come up, which I'd love for you to chime in on, Jamie. How do you market to clients under the current circumstances? Should we focus on marketing after COVID-19 or start marketing now?
So I definitely would say start marketing now, and I wouldn't even think about it as marketing. So the next slide we're going to talk about is community, but you want to not be silent during this time. So this is relationship building, and you want to make sure, like when we use the word marketing, maybe it depends on your customer size, but it is this customer discovery and it's calling every customer. Maybe that's your new marketing strategy. Depends what your business is and what you're doing. But I just would highly recommend that we kind of shift these business terms to thinking more through, what do my customers need and what can I provide for them? And they're going through this hard time just like me. What does that relationship look like right now and then after?
Yeah. So I'm going to add to what Jamie said. First, I agree. You want to continue marketing, but the marketing changes.
Yeah.
It is not your typical marketing message. Now the marketing message is, I'm listening. How can we help? And so what you want to do is shift from a push message to a pull message. So instead of saying, dear customer, here's what we have to offer. I know you have this problem. Here is the solution to all your problems. What you want to do is go to a pull model. And the pull model says, dear customer, I'm here for you. Talk to me. Right? So this is where, for example, instead of pushing ads, you might actually do webinars. You might pose questions for people to ask, like to answer or discuss in social. This is a place for you to go to Facebook groups that are topical and pose the questions in there. So use different techniques, but the strategy is, instead of push marketing, we're doing pull marketing, right? Yeah. Okay.
And it helps with that idea of shutting off automation. If you have ads and things on Facebook running, also looking at expenses and really looking at the data, because it maybe is a great time to just, it's human to human rather than these mass strategies. Yeah.
Well said. Cool. That's great. So thanks for that. So what we'll do then is, I'm just going to move it to the next slide so we can talk more about that topic Jamie just mentioned, which is community.
Yeah. So community is something that I've been working in for the last 5 years. And what's really important about community is that it's a very different, even the word sounds different than marketing, because it's not just about your customer. So your community actually makes up customers. It could be prospects, potential customers, but it's much larger than that. So it's your network, it's your partners, your supply chain, any vendors, it's your team, so staff, advisors, investors. It also includes your supporters, so people who have been with you from the beginning, your family and friends. And what's so important of acknowledging this, it's actually like a beautiful asset list that you have. And you need, like Keith said, it takes a village to start a business, but it takes one to save it. So you really want to start looking at your community as this holistic approach, because each sort of group here, you can help them and they can help you in different ways. And you want to look at that. So how are the conversations changing? So again, that listening model. So this really ties in to all of what we're talking about here. And once you kind of have, again, the order of this is so important. You've looked at your marketing. Now you want to look at your community. So how do I turn this into a strategic advantage? So the thing with community that's amazing is that when a strong community is built, they are with you during the good times and they're with you during the bad times. So customers at this point, you might have some that are leaving, you might find new customers, but with community, it's probably because it's bigger than that. So you want to think about your asset list of who's in your community and then starting to look at their conversations, how can you help them, and then looking at a strategy. Anything else to add to that, Keith?
No, I think you've done a really great job of describing it. And I want to just bring it back to that marketing comment that was made earlier, right? Like when we think about our world as a community or set of communities versus us and the customer is a transaction. Community is a relationship. And if you take a relationship approach now during this crisis and recession, you will have much stronger customer relationships and supporting relationships like the ones that are here. But I actually believe that in how people run their business, this will be the fundamental shift that we will see. The people who will win coming out of this recession are the people who embrace a community approach to customers, prospects, partners, etc. And so that's probably my final comment there.
Well, and I love that because kind of another big aha I had as you were talking is that this is such a special time because it's one of the few times that you can actually say to your community, I get it. I'm with you. I feel this. We're going through the same thing. There's very few times that we can actually say that and mean it. So it's such an opportunity to build this strong foundation because building community will recession-proof your business. And maybe it's this business and it's this time, but maybe it's a future, we want to be business owners for a long time. So this is a long-term strategy, but it's a very, very important one.
Cool. So I'm going to move us on to product and service mix. And so if you guys remember, we were talking about how we're changing our approach to sales, marketing, and community. The outcome of that, and this is where if I go back to Ivy's comment about, kind of sales and if we have 30-day plan, in the next 30 days, you should be able to identify if you need to make changes to what you're offering the market, whether that is product or service or a mix of both. So for example, in the case of Destiel, an example there would be how they have a co-working space, but they also run events and they have other activities. And so they're going to really know where to change and alter the way that they're doing things. And so I think that's really important to note. And so you really want to be honest about this. And my encouragement to you would be that you guys have a vision for what you're trying to achieve, what success looks like to you. And so remember, the vision doesn't change. How you get there can alter, right? So that can change along the way, which is actually the product and service that you're offering now. And so the important part is don't feel wed to, or don't feel so tightly connected to what you're offering today. Your goal is, my vision is to help my customer. And so if we have to change things around in order to get there, then let's do it. But follow the feedback from our sales activities, our marketing activities, and our community activities to tell us what changes we should make, right? And so I think that's the kind of focal point that I would give you there. So maybe Jamie, if you have any comments or things to add on that one, and if not, we can go on.
Yeah, no, I just think it's all about listening and don't make big changes until you've done the work before. It's so important to, I think as entrepreneurs, we can be amazing, but we can get in our head of what we think it should be and what we believe people want. Talk to people and find out before you make changes.
Cool. Arlene just asked a question for co-working spaces and community hubs. What are some suggestions on monetizing some online activities? So Arlene, what we'll do is we'll come to that at the end. And so the good thing is we have actually a couple of really good questions that are lined up here for the end. So we will come back to that one because I think it's kind of it's an all-encompassing question that we'll dive into. So on product service mix, I do want to wrap from sales and marketing through to kind of product service. I'm going to use this restaurant as an example. So Earl's Restaurant is a small restaurant chain, group of restaurants that has been around for about 25 years. So this is an old, well-established, traditional business. And this now starts to speak to Sunili's question about a restaurant. And so like a restaurant, like all restaurants, they can't have people sitting there. So the most logical starting place for them was to do delivery. So pickup and delivery. So they immediately shifted, but that meant that they needed to have an online presence, they needed to do e-commerce, and they needed to partner with online delivery services. So that was kind of innovation number one. And then innovation number two is they said, well, what do we have as a restaurant? We have food. So what they actually have started to do is they started to do grocery delivery as well, to make people's lives easier. And especially when people are looking for certain types of groceries that maybe are sold out at their favorite market or store. And so not only are they doing pickup and delivery of food, but they're also doing delivery of groceries. And the third one is they're doing delivery of pre-packaged meal plans. So imagine if you said, hey, listen, I want this amazing Santa Fe salad that, you know, the image is on the screen, or the salmon and rice and asparagus. Then what they actually do is they will pre-package the portion sizes for you and give you the instructions for how to cook them. So what they've done is they have re-altered their product service mix. They've also embraced a couple of different pieces of technology. It is important to note that in this process, they have laid off their serving staff, which is unfortunate, but they've actually kept their kitchen staff, and they've kept some of their serving staff to help with the processing of the orders. So they actually were able to save a lot of jobs in doing this process. So even though it was a traditional business, it's an example of somebody listening to the customer, changing product service, changing the marketing and online and the distribution, right? That online delivery, and also talking to the team and getting the team involved so they could minimize, you know, the number of job losses. So I think it's a really, really good example. And then I just want to touch on team briefly. And with the team, it is important to note that you just want to bring, you know, the right skills and experience. So what I just shared with Earl's, people who can package stuff up and get it out the door, people who are comfortable with an e-commerce website. Who is most important on the team? Make sure they're happy, make sure they're confident, and then how you get them involved, as we discussed. So just in summary, these are the universal truth questions, the 5 on the left. We have our 6 categories on the right, and then we have those category specific questions. And one thing I do want to share is that we will be providing you guys a workbook coming out of this, so you can actually apply all of this into your business right away. So maybe what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause here, and then what we'll do is we'll talk about some of the questions that you guys have. And maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch on the co-working space question. And so Arlene, I'm going to give you a very crazy example, but actually an example that I have seen in action. So there is a community hub in a city in Canada. The city is called Langley. And it's actually one part community hub, one part makerspace. And so in their particular case, they have a community, and they said, well, what does my community need? And so one of the challenges that they saw, because they have a makerspace, and so there's entrepreneurs, but it also includes restaurant entrepreneurs. And so what they realized is that their restaurants couldn't serve food at the restaurant, but they could serve takeout and delivery. So the co-working space actually started a food and product delivery business. So true story, that Arlene, the people who were like in the space and activating the space, they got in their cars and they started to deliver meals, groceries, products, literally as far as like wood and tin and other things like that to their customers. So they said, our customers typically come into the hub to do business. We will now meet them at their homes so they can continue to do life and business. And so the reason I shared that with you is in their first week, they did, I think it was 6 deliveries. In 4 weeks, last week, they did 156 deliveries in 4 weeks, right? So that's just over 20 deliveries a day. Now, actually, they have revenue. Like now they have a business. So they literally, instead of asking yourself, what do I do? What you say is, who is my customer, right? So in your case, your customers are first businesses, which include entire teams as well as freelancers. The second thing that you want to talk about is, what do they need as people as well, right? So now we have 2 things. What do they need in business? What do they need in life? And then you say, now I will bring the community to them. And so some of that is bricks and mortar and some of it is online. Now in the online, I think events like this are fantastic free events and they're really important for communities. So do sprinkle in the free, but the for pay is the premium stuff. So for example, one-on-one mentoring, one-on-one support with an expert, right? So anything that's like one-on-one bespoke tailored support, that would be an opportunity for premium for sure. That would be the place that I would go. And so those are a couple of quick suggestions that I have. If anybody on this call has a suggestion for Arlene or ideas, please put them in the chat. Would love to see what other ideas that you guys might want to share. IB, can you build a bill for mentorship? I think that's great. The other idea related to that, Arlene, is think about doing micro memberships. So people buy into your community hub because of what it stands for. Can you ask people, for example, to give you a small amount of money as a monthly membership just because it's supporting what you do with maybe like free online webinars like this, for example. So micro memberships or micro donations is a great way of doing it as well. Cool.
Do you want to move to the question how this situation might impact incubators and accelerators, sort of off of what you just answered?
Yeah, so Mentor, great question. And for everybody, Mentor is based in Pristina and is an amazing guy. Mentor, great to see you on this call. And so I would encourage everybody to connect up as much as you can in LinkedIn coming out of this. So Mentor's great to see you here. It will absolutely impact incubators and accelerators like it will impact all industries. So for example, what did people need in the past? Traditional incubation and acceleration, not so much, right? People are in this crazy crisis mode. So incubators and accelerators, business resiliency programs, digital transformation programs for traditional businesses like restaurants to embrace technology quickly. So number 1, business resilience. Number 2, digital transformation. Number 3, master classes. So if any of you guys know Brainstir, which is based out of Skopje, Brainstir is a good example of where people will need to go. So it's one thing for you to show me digital transformation. I need to do Facebook marketing for my restaurant. But the second one is like, I need the tools. I need to understand how to build a website. I need to understand how to do Facebook marketing, like the actual technical understanding. So master classes. So those are the big 3: business resilience, digital transformation, master classes. Those are the big 3 that you will see. And then I think, Mentor, you will see a return to what we call pre-incubation or idea stage. As a lot of people lose jobs, they'll look at entrepreneurship as a potential option to dive in on that. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we'll move through. Cool. Will we see a different behavioral pattern in the way we work from remote work, open office spaces, homeschooling, so in education, etc.?
Yeah, I do absolutely think so. And the reason is because of that 60-day human nature patterns behavior. I think a lot of people will realize they can spend less on office space. They can do office very differently. I actually think this will end up being a huge benefit to co-working spaces and community hubs. I think traditional office buildings will suffer or have to adapt. Homeschooling education, absolutely. It's kind of like the mobile health movement that I talked about earlier. I think what a lot of people are going to identify is that like augmenting education, even if kids go back to school, right? Augmenting or supporting education with online activities, online resources, online courses, absolutely. And smart school systems will embrace it. Like they'll include it as a part of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, great example.
Okay. Isn't a better analogy for describing the new normal, the massive change that occurred when the internet became mainstream? Recession is mostly economic. The internet changed everyone's behavior and created new ecosystems like we will soon see.
Well, I love anytime somebody combines macroeconomics with philosophy, I'm like,
I also have my ability to read, apparently. So
no, it's all good.
Sorry for Warren.
So Warren, great question. I'm going to make a comment. When the internet became mainstream and the massive change that created, massive change, that is where the analogy both starts and ends. And I'm going to explain. The internet becoming mainstream, like fundamentally, the internet started off as a rich world tool. And so it was many years, it was in the hands of the developed world, and it has slowly trickled into the world writ large, like everyone. And even now, there's a lot of places in the world where the internet is still not even reasonably available. A recession impacts everyone from the moment it starts, and it does not discriminate between geography, between income levels, between age. So it's in this particular case is fundamentally different. The massive change part is the same, but how it impacts everyone is dramatically different. And that's why it's really important to note that. I do love the comparison of how the internet has changed everyone's behavior. I just think it's really important to note that it really changed every rich person's behavior. Mm-hmm. And so, but the recession and the COVID crisis changes everyone's behavior because it's mandated. Everyone's stuck at home. Right? Like it's a mandatory change. The internet has been optional. And I'm sure you guys can relate to this. Like most restaurants that we know don't even have a website still. And that's in North America, right? Like where the internet and high speed has been pervasive for years. And so, but now everybody has to do it. Mm-hmm. So I love this idea, Warren. There are definitely commonalities. There are definitely some differences. And I think what we want to do is constantly think about what those differences are. Where it's similar to 9/11 is that some of the post-event activity was fear-based, right? In that case, it was fear of terrorism. This time it's fear of disease and death. Mm-hmm. And so, but the differences are, again, people weren't mandated to stay at home, and it impacted like everyone this one impacts everyone on the planet, whereas 9/11 kind of only impacted part of the planet, right? So I think it's always good to think about those as an entrepreneur, because then it helps us to think about how we respond. So great question. So I know there was a question that popped into chat, Jamie.
Yes, there is. This may be a bit too specific as a question. Any advice for consultancies that focus on community interface governmental affairs, meaning that I advise companies on how to do that? But for the moment, governments are focused on other things and communities are locked up. So that's an interesting question based on, if you are a consultant and you're consulting on something that isn't happening right now, where do you go from there?
Yeah. So I am going to highlight one very important thing. We are technically 4 minutes to the close of this session, mm-hmm. But we did start about 15 minutes late because of the technical difficulties we had at the beginning. So for everyone on the call, I am willing to stay for a few extra minutes just to blast through a few more questions. So what I'm going to do just very quickly, in case anybody needs to leave, and again, I'm going to come back to a couple of those questions. One is, my encouragement to you is ask for help. So, talk weekly, talk regularly with people, create a priority list of people who can help you. Send regular update emails. They could be weekly or they could be monthly. Updates include like big wins, what you've learned, progress, and then also always include at least one ask and one offer, right? This is a time for community. Always say thank you to the people who help. Create what we call a hive mind around you, which is peer groups of support. Other entrepreneurs and other people around you that you can trust and be authentic with. Make sure, again, you include your team. And then just very quickly, we are going to share the resilience checklist, which is a workbook you guys can use. We're going to send an FAQ with some answers to these questions and some follow-up. And then for upcoming webinars, EU for Innovation has set up a full set. And these are the dates with these are the topics, right? So emergency response for your business, your new normal plan. So actually building the plan, your new sales plan, marketing plan, community plan, raising money in a recession, which touches on one of the questions that was raised earlier, and also even investing in uncertain times. So just know we're going to be going through these webinars, and I'm going to leave that up for the time being. And John, you asked a question, will you get a recording? Yes, a recording will be shared. So you guys will have access to the recording. And so really, really valuable. So Jamie, you had that question about consultancies. At the end of the day, consultancies are problem solvers for their clients. And so when it comes to government affairs, and so advising companies on how to do that, I do think what you want to do is advise your companies on how to go to government and say, what do you need now, right? Like, what problems are you facing now as government? How can I help? Sometimes the government will tell you things that they need that you can't help, but this is the opportunity to step into that new world of what the government needs. Whether that is around ecosystem strategy or supply chain or medical devices or anything in between. So my encouragement on this topic is talk to your companies about taking this customer discovery approach and identifying what their particular government customers need or don't need, and then deciding if they can step into that with solutions. I think that's really the starting point. If I were to give one piece of advice to everybody on this call, is that I think the greatest need that everyone needs right now, B2B and B2C, is that they need people to curate. They need people to help them filter the noise to know what to do and what to pick and what to buy. So for your government clients, like the government's going to be like, what do I do? And you want your customers, your companies to say, dear government, this is how we can help, whether it is through products and services or making introductions or advising in other ways. So that would be my encouragement there.
Awesome. Do you want to try 2 before we go, or should we add those to the FAQs?
And maybe one more to wrap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think protectionism will take foot in different countries around the world? How will digital products and services manage to overcome this?
Yeah, it's such a great question. This is probably the hottest debate economically about what's happening right now. Because of course, the biggest debate is how long is the lockdown going to last? There are 2 very opposite opinions on this. One is that protectionism will really take hold, and then the second one is actually that it'll actually reduce. I'm going to give you my opinion. Brexit, the Republican government in the United States, a few other governments around the world for sure, over the last 2 years have been becoming more and more protectionist as the economy has unfolded. And people have just kind of allowed that to happen, right? Because it's just like, well, it's another day in the life. My opinion is that right now there is no geography, right? So we're on this call right now. We've got people in Nigeria, we've got people in Canada, we've got people in Switzerland, we've got people in Albania, we've got people in Kosovo on this call, right? And we don't even notice. And so I think 2 things. One is online completely makes borders transparent. And the second one is that when we are seeking sales in a recession, we're hungry. And so then we want to go elsewhere. So sometimes protectionism, the greatest threat to protectionism is companies that refuse to try and sell elsewhere. So I think it forces us to go out. And now people are going to buy because they need, right? There's not going to be a lot of fluff out there. There's not going to be a lot of like luxuries. And so if people have a need and you need to solve it, they'll go solve it. So I'll give you an example. Canada, in this crisis, we need a certain type of medical device in Canada that we have a shortage of. And so the Canadian government actually set up a supply chain in China because they couldn't set it up in Canada fast enough. Like, it's the perfect example of why protectionism can't work in a crisis and can't work in a recession. So IB, in short, this is just a reminder, it's my opinion, but I would say that online makes borders transparent, and the necessity out of need for product and service and the necessity to sell product and service, I think will actually really undermine protectionism and actually make it more of a global economy again. It's my opinion. So.
Keith, I hate loose ends. We have one question. I hate having the one question.
Yeah, cryptocurrency startup.
Yeah.
So all things cryptocurrency, blockchain. On a personal level, Dorian, I think that this is only going to grow in importance, especially as we work in a virtual and online environment. And so one is because of this globalization and the kind of virtual experience. I think it's going to really further mainstream cryptocurrency. And the second one is that a lot of financial institutions have already been embracing it or trying to embrace it. But now, out of necessity, they'll have to step into it quickly. So, Dorian, on a personal level, I think that that's going to be a big trend.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. I feel so much better, Keith. Feel better.
We got all the questions answered, or at least all of them for now. So a couple of things that I would say to everyone on this call: you are going to get a recording. The second one is you will get our checklist, so the toolkit that will give you to go through this. EU for Innovation will be sending the next links for you to sign up to the next set of webinars that you see on your screen. And so do sign up for whichever ones are relevant for you. But I have two asks for sure. One is connect with me, connect with Jamie Smith in LinkedIn. If you guys have any questions, just reach out to us anytime. That's number one. Number two is, if you have a topic that you don't see on this webinar list, let EU for Innovation know, right? Let us know if there's a topic that you need to get covered, and maybe there's going to be a way that we can either put it into one of these, or we can create like an extra one that we can get your questions answered. So yeah, so for all of you who are based in Albania, I miss you guys. I actually was supposed to be in Albania next week. That was my original game plan, and so I definitely miss you guys. I hope things are going well. You guys are staying safe. Connect up with us in LinkedIn. The question was just asked about LinkedIn profiles. I'm very going to quickly throw mine in the chat. And while I'm doing that, just to highlight to everyone that my name is Keith Ippel. And the good news is that in LinkedIn, there's actually only 2 Keith Ippels. And the other one is my dad, and he's a great guy. And so you can connect with me, or you can connect with my dad. It's either way. But you look for the one that looks a little bit younger, and you'll be good.
Awesome. So we'll see everyone soon.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We look forward to keeping in touch. Connect up with us in LinkedIn, and we'll chat soon.
Bye now.
Okay. Take care.